Hey, Sox fans, welcome to Good Guys Talk Back. This is episode 209. I am Nick Murawski, and this is a fan-centric Chicago White Sox podcast. You can find it absolutely everywhere you find your podcast. We're also going live right now on our YouTube channel, something we've been trying to do for the last month or so, 8 p.m. on 8:30, on Sundays. But obviously, you can find the audio of our podcast everywhere on Twitter at Good Guys TB, and we've got a Facebook fan page. We have a great episode. We are going to be joined by Matt Flesch from the last Comiskey documentary in just a few moments, talking to him about the big part two of what he released a couple years ago with his brother. And I cannot wait to pick his brain. I'm very excited about this, as I know you are, Mr. Pat Hester. Welcome, sir.
Nick, it's good to talk to you, buddy. You already had an error, just like the Sox infield, right to start the show. You said we're on at 8,
Yep.
We're on at 8:30. That's okay.
Yep.
It's spring training, and we're going to work on this. We're going to work out the kinks and get into the season, man.
Yeah. We got a couple games to talk about. Maybe we'll talk even a little Tim Anderson later on in this episode, but going to be talking a lot of Comiskey, 1990, some of the nostalgia. Hopefully, folks, you haven't had an opportunity at some point over the last couple of years now to take in what Matt and his brother have done. It's entitled Last Comiskey. It's out on YouTube. It's been out on YouTube. And boy, they've got some new stuff that's going to be dropping on Thursday, March 2nd. And it's going to be 3 consecutive Thursdays where they're going to give you we had a sneak preview, Pat and I,
Yep.
and of part 1 that's going to come out this Thursday, March 2nd. If you're from that era, and even if you're not, I mean, any White Sox fan needs to be watching this documentary. But if you lived through those moments of the late 80s, early 90s, and especially that last year for Sox Park, Pat, Comiskey Park, unbelievable, just chills going through and seeing all those familiar faces that they were able to talk to.
Yeah, it was definitely fun. These guys do a fantastic job. It's like taking a trip down memory lane for sure. And, it helps me remember things that I forgot about, things that just like, my memory is not so good these days. And it's just fun to go back and relive these moments that, seem like 1,000 years ago now. And seeing the ballpark the way it was and thinking about how you felt taking in a game live and watching it on TV. It's great. It's very well done. And I can't wait to see the next episodes drop.
Yeah, if you loved what they did, and I'm sure you did enjoy it, and you pass it around to other Sox fans in your life, you are going to be thrilled with what they've put together. That is going to be dropping on March 2nd. So let's bring him in, Matt Flesch, producer, director of Last Comiskey. Matt, welcome to Good Guys Talk Back. Welcome back, I should say.
All right. Yeah. Hey, guys. Thanks so much for having me back.
Matt, we were talking a little before, we started recording with you that almost 2 years ago that we had you and your brother on for the first time on Good Guys Talk Back to talk about the original documentary, the thing that kind of started it all. And I'm so happy that you continued to do what you do. But I do want to get to the why factor of that. If you could give everybody that, for some reason, if they haven't watched your material yet, the last Comiskey, just kind of the elevator pitch of what this is, what did you try to do? And then maybe give me a sense of like, well, why did you continue it? Why did you feel like there was more like what more stories to tell, so to speak?
Yeah. So I guess just taking it back, in 1990, I was 15 years old. And I think that's kind of the golden age of being a baseball fan. You're young enough that you still think you have a chance to play for the Sox someday. But you're old enough to start to really appreciate some of the nuance of the game, and not just the nuance of the game, but also the stadium, Old Comiskey Park. At that age where you start to realize, wow, this place is really special. And I think during that last year, going to a good amount of games, but more, I probably watched every game on TV, and I loved that park. And I loved that team, the way that team played. the hustle, the stolen bases, the bunting the guy over, the unbelievable defense with Guillen and Fletcher and Lance Johnson. And it just kind of always stuck with me. And I think part of the reason it stuck with me so much is because it was also the last year in that old ballpark.
Yep.
And that ballpark was really special. And like I said, the games I went to that year, it really started to hit me just what a special place it was. I really started to get an understanding. So then in 2020 with the pandemic, when everything kind of shut down and nights and weekends, you're kind of thinking through, okay, what are we going to do now? There's no baseball. And so my brother Mike and I started putting together just old footage, and we put together our original 6-part series, which was really narration, and it was old clips and narration, and it got a good response. And I think what started to happen is we started hearing from people who played on the team. Started hearing from, I think it was Nancy Faust was the first person to reach out to us and say how much she liked it. Started to kind of started a friendship with her, where she actually gave us a videotape of home footage from the last game at Old Comiskey.
Wow.
And some of the other games too. And so we watched that, and we thought, yeah, let's do like a 10-15 minute, let's revisit this and just do a 10-15 minute thing, just people remember in the park in that season. And so talked to Nancy, talked to Tom Scher, who's been a great collaborator on this project. He was on The Score, longtime Chicago sportscaster. Rich King, another longtime Chicago sportscaster. Kenny McReynolds. And then we interviewed Dan Evans, and he is an unbelievable interview. And just, he has so much history with the White Sox and so many stories. And I didn't know how much 1990 was important to him. He was here from 1981 to 2000. So I wasn't sure if 1990 stuck out. It really stuck out. He had just the most incredible stories about that team, those draft picks, Ozzie Guillen, Jeff Torborg. And it just kind of snowballed from there, and just thought, hey, let's see if we can get Ozzie. Let's see if we can get Bobby Thigpen, Jack McDowell, Lance Johnson. And so it really just kind of evolved from there into, hey, let's revisit this and let's make it more of a real documentary where you interview people and you have different perspectives. So it's like the way my brother Mike puts it is the other thing was like the minor leagues, and this is like the major leagues. So
yeah,
that's kind of the genesis of the project.
Yeah, awesome.
So Matt, I love all that, and I think it's fantastic the way you were able to weave in all the footage that you saw, or from video cameras. So was all that from Nancy, or how did you were you able to accumulate all that raw footage? Because I just don't remember a lot of people walking around with cameras all the time. Obviously there were people with camera phones. So how laborious was that, and how was that process in terms of gathering all that great footage?
Yeah, Twitter was really helpful for that, because put a call out for anybody who had photos or video. And there was one person in particular, John Brudnick, who was a Andy Frain supervisor in the late 80s, early 90s. And the last season, he took his video camera to a game, and he walked around the whole park, inside the park, outside the park. He took video where the Andy Frain ushers would hang out. He took video where they had like a holding cell for people who were arrested at the park. Just this incredibly cool footage of all like the nooks and crannies and the cavernous like underground of Old Comiskey Park. And so there was a number of people, other people who also shared their videos with us. And so you had to get take the VHS tape. There's a place I would take it in Naperville that could turn the VHS into a digital file so we could use it. But there is a ton of home video of the park, and some of the aspects of it that you didn't see on TV, some of the stuff, under the stands and with the vendors and things like that. So that was part of the fun. It was like one great big collaboration with a lot of Sox fans who had photography and video that they were more than willing to share. Nobody asked for money for any of this stuff. They all wanted to be part of it. So it's very, very cool the way that came together.
You'd mentioned in the Tribune article that came out, which I'm so happy that you guys got mentioned. If you haven't had an opportunity, read the article in the Chicago Tribune Sunday edition. Paul Sullivan had the write-up, and you mentioned that it's a labor of love, a passion project, which I absolutely love that, and especially since it's about the White Sox. And when I started to watch, the part one of this kind of second phase that you kindly let Pat and I take a sneak peek at. It was almost like a love letter to the White Sox by so many players. You talk about Nancy Faust, but there's so many other players that spoke so passionately about, Comiskey Park and the fans in that 1990 season. And one person that got a lot of love in part one was Jeff Torborg. And I, of course, remember him managing and the big glasses and the starter, jacket and everything. But he got so much attention from the players that you were able to interview. And I'd love to get your perspective and how that happened. How did it come about that, Jeff Torborg, or were you surprised even that Torborg was mentioned so much?
Yeah, I always wondered, for instance, as I didn't know Ozzie Guillen considered him the greatest manager that he ever played for. And I think Ozzie mentioned a few times when I spoke with him about how he emulated Jeff Torborg's style in a lot of ways, in terms of one of the sayings was, "I'm the boss, but I'm going to let you play."
Mm-hmm.
And he set the tone. He was really about keeping a tight community in that team, having a really close-knit team, but also letting players play. And if you look at that young team with, Ventura going 0 for 41 in his rookie year, a lot of people struggling, he kept putting their name in the lineup, and he kept demanding certain things of those players. Like Ventura played great defense. He bunted guys over. He hit behind the rudder. And so he was 0 for 41, but he was still out there because he was playing the game the right way. And then you have a guy like Ozzie Guillen who's reinforcing that as a player for the whole team. But yeah, I think everybody I spoke to just loved playing for Torborg. I think he was a really great manager. I think it's a shame he didn't get to finish things out with the Sox, because I think he could have been a stronger manager for those 93, 94 teams. And he went to the Mets, which was a terrible situation. He went from a bunch of young people, kind of creating this whole vibe of family, to go into that Mets team, which was a bunch of high-priced free agents who weren't going to listen to a guy like Torborg. But you're absolutely right. Torborg definitely set a tone, and every player just, they go on and on. They love playing for him.
So Matt, you had mentioned, and Nick kind of brought it in, were you surprised about Jeff Torborg? I'd like to ask you, what other things kind of surprised you that kind of made you take a step back in this process, maybe even versus the first time you guys kind of went through this, like either who it was or what it was that you found out that was just kind of a shocker to you?
Yeah, there's a bunch of things. I think one thing is I've always been a huge Ozzie Guillen fan, a great defensive player, and he turned into a great manager. I guess I didn't know the extent by which he was a leader on that team. I knew he was a leader, but I didn't know the extent to how he was kind of almost a second manager, second captain, keeping that team to where, like he says, every pitch counts, every single at bat matters, not letting people slough off. So I think that was a surprising element. There's a lot of other really cool things. Bobby Thigpen, who we got to talk to, and he's featured in more depth in our part 3, where we really get into the bullpen. And the bullpen stuff is interesting. Bobby Thigpen, they said that he would throw like 70 pitches in the bullpen getting ready. And they would actually have to hold the ball because he would I don't know if it was just nerves. And Thigpen didn't really explain why he was doing that, but he would throw so much in the bullpen before he came out and saved the games. And he saved 57 games that year and appeared in some ungodly amount of games. So just some of those inside baseball type things is really a big part of what I wanted to get at. And the bullpen that year was amazing. And just hearing the way that bullpen, you always think that the relief pitchers are, at least I always did. I thought that they were, in the bullpen, watching the game, following the action, really on top of it. And what I learned is they were doing all kinds of crazy stuff back there, like, playing Game Boy and pretended to play golf. And like, they weren't really even watching the game until it got later in the game. So it's just some of those little inside bits I thought were really interesting.
So many fun personalities. Loved hearing from Fletcher and Hibbert and Gallagher. It's a trip down memory lane, growing up, just having all these baseball cards and watching these guys and to hear them talk about, the 1990 season. And I think Nancy Faust brought it up in part 1 of, we were all going to say goodbye to Comiskey Park. This was the last year for Comiskey Park. And then all of a sudden it turned into, wait a second, this team is actually really exciting. and fun, and they were predicted to not do very well. And it really rubbed a lot of players. And I think Dan Evans even talked about it. We hated hearing that. We hated that we were being predicted to finish so poorly. So talk a little bit about, which obviously the documentary focuses on, is the Oakland A's, a powerhouse team, and what this 1990 White Sox team brought to the table. How could they compete with a powerhouse, a juggernaut like the Oakland Athletics?
Yeah, I think it's a great point. And one of the reasons why that year is so captivating too, because you love a good underdog story. And the White Sox were picked last by everybody. And then you love to have a good villain in any story. And the A's were, if you weren't in Oakland, you hated the A's. Canseco and McGuire and all those guys, they were just, it was the team. It was like the Bulls in the 90s. You just wanted to take them off that pedestal. And I think what the Sox did that year is their pitching was lights out. They executed super well on offense. They were gritty. They fought it out. They worked every single at bat. It's one of the things that Fletcher and Guillen and Lance Johnson, they all talk about Walt Herniak. And Walt Herniak was the hitting coach for the Sox back in 1990. And they all talked about how he would have these pregame meetings and just fire the team up. And they would all have a plan of how they're going to attack that pitcher. And Fletcher said that he would, Herniak always had a story that he would tell to, just to get everybody fired up. We're going to, whatever that pitcher's weakness, we're going to exploit until we get them. And whatever that may be. So I think that was something where they wanted it so bad. And all those players as well, one of the things that they say is they hated to lose more than they liked to win. And I heard that multiple occasions by all those players. They were young. They believed they could win. They hated to lose. They expected to win. And that mindset that they brought that year was really, it was such a turning point for the White Sox, because those mid to late 80s teams were so difficult to watch and just struggled so much. It was like this whole new vibe and this whole new attitude that they had. And I think that's just a big part of it is just the way that Torborg brought in that mentality. And then you had guys like Guillen and Walt Herniak. And I think that people didn't like playing them. Like Lance Johnson said that. I don't think people like playing us because they just they weren't going to quit.
Yeah.
So Matt, I'm going to switch back over from players to the ballpark itself.
Yeah.
And in a couple of the shots you see, from the vantage point, you can see the new ballpark on the horizon on the other side of the street. So my question to you is as a fan and a person that obviously loved the stadium as much as you did, do you wish that new Comiskey Park was just a replica, kind of like Yankee Stadium, I guess, is built very similar to the way old Yankee Stadium was? Or would you have liked them to try and renovate old Comiskey Park, or would that have cheapened it and taken a little of the charm away to add luxury boxes and suites and change the ballpark to make it more modernized? What would you have preferred? Because I think, the new ballpark has grown on a lot of people, but it at first wasn't so charming. It's gotten a little more charming as the years go by. So what would you have liked to have seen if you could make it happen?
Yeah, first would of course be that they could renovate it. I would have loved it if they could have kept it. I think if they had been able to renovate it and kept it there, it would be a landmark. It would be a destination. You're coming to Chicago, check out Wrigley, and you also got to check out Comiskey, oldest park in baseball. I think it would be the only park that would have those upper decks all the way out to the outfield, and the scoreboard right in the center. It had such an iconic look. I would have loved if they could have renovated it. And even if they had to do some things like they have at Wrigley that make it less old school, I think keeping the bones, because that old park, you were so close to the action. If you were in the upper deck, you were right on top of the field, anywhere in the upper deck. Now, there were some terrible seats, don't get me wrong, like behind the poles and some of the corners. I mean, some of the worst seats you could possibly imagine. But you didn't really sit there unless it was like the World Series, I guess. If you had one of those terrible seats, you'd go to the picnic area, you'd go to the catwalk, you'd find another seat to sit in. It never really was an issue. So that'd be my first choice. My second choice would be, build a new park. And I think the problem with all the new parks, and this is not just new Sox Park, I think, is just the way they made the upper deck so far away and so high up because they had so many levels of suites. And I wish there could just be some way. So I know you got to have the suites. You do. It's a revenue thing, but there's got to be some way to lower the upper deck, put the suite somewhere where it still allows the regular fans to be closer to the action and the upper deck to be more over the field. So I hope, maybe they'll just keep renovating the new park and eventually it'll look exactly like Comiskey Park and then we'll be all good.
It's available to play in some video game. And I am not a video game guy, but I heard it's like an option when you're playing this new video game to play at Old Comiskey, which I think is great. There's so many nuggets to take away from, I guess I call it this like second phase of this part 2 that you're going to be releasing starting on March 2nd. Now there's other storylines. You've got obviously Comiskey Park. You've got the 1990 drama with the Oakland Athletics, but there are other angles like, the 1977 Chicago White Sox, the Southside Hitmen. What other storylines or threads, can we expect here in the second phase?
Yeah, the 77 Hitmen, the Nancy Faust portion just kind of lent itself to, you go back to 1970 when she started playing. She really made a name for herself with the 77 Hitmen with Nana Hey Hey. And then with Dick Allen in 1972 playing Jesus Christ Superstar when he came up to bat, kind of put her on the map. And so kind of telling the story of the old park from 1970 onward through Nancy's playing and the way she brought so much to that experience at Comiskey Park. I mean, how many parks... Just think about Comiskey. Like you could walk up to the organist and be like, "Hey, Jose Canseco's going out with Madonna, so when he comes up, you should play a Madonna song." And she's like, "Oh, good idea," and she plays it. I mean, that's so cool. But getting back to your question, there's it goes back. We have a segment on 1983 in part 2, which was a lot of fun, and it's we talk. There's a lot on chemistry in this documentary, and I'm a big believer, having played baseball back in the day myself, and just if you're on a team where people like each other and you're pulling for each other and you kind of have a vibe, you're going to be better. And that 1983 team had an incredible chemistry. Talking to, Vance Law, Ron Kittle, they just talked about how there was such a tight bond on that team in 1983 and how subsequent moves after that year kind of took away some of that chemistry. So I think that 1983 bit, that team was awesome and such a fun team. So there's a bit on that. And there is also probably my favorite part of this thing, I'd have to say, if I had to pick it, is we have a segment on the vendors, the beer vendors. That's about 6 or 7 minutes long. There's this guy, Lloyd Rutsky, who was a vendor from, 1965 to 2019. And then Mark Reiner's another one. And another vendor from the mid 80s, David Ruggendorf. And these guys were just hilarious. They had the best stories. Lloyd Rutsky and Mark Reiner, like they would compete who could sell the most loads of beer, and just the stories of selling beer like in the bathroom and like selling beer to people on their way out of the park. Take one for the road, and just how things were just unhinged back in the 70s. That they just there was no limits. They didn't cut off beer sales. So I thought that was really, really interesting. And just the bond that the vendors had, like the chemistry amongst the vendors was really cool too. So that thematic kind of carries through the whole thing.
So Matt, as you've gone through this process and the process the first time around, I'm sure there's a lot of things that, didn't get past the cutting room floor. I'm sure there's things that you didn't put in, or maybe there's things that you're thinking about. So, I know you just got this one wrapped up and you're the new episodes are ready to launch. Are there things in the future that you'd like to explore, or different stories or different eras that you'd like to, do something like this on?
Yeah. Well, one thing on this, there's a number of outtakes that didn't make it in, like some really funny anecdotes and things that just didn't fit. Like, I guess Ozzie Guillen got sick of everybody wearing the same tie on the flights. So he would, if you wore the same tie, he would cut your tie. And they all talked about that. And then he would give you $20. So Wayne Edwards was a relief pitcher, and he said he just started wearing, really crappy ties. So Ozzie would cut it and give him $20, make extra money. So that was good. But yeah, definitely after this, going to take a break. But what do you guys think? Like, when you think of your favorite teams and stuff, if you wanted there to be a documentary on a team in your lifetime, what team stands out to you guys?
For me, it's the 93 team. And then you could, maybe bleed into 94 into the strike year, because for me, it was, and for all fans of baseball, but especially White Sox fans, of that 94 team, thinking that you really had a chance. It was the first time in my life as a fan I really thought, this is, we're going to go to the World Series. We're going to face the Braves. That was in my mind. We're going to go to the World Series. We're playing against the Braves, and I can't wait. Two best pitching staffs in baseball. So that 93 team for me was, had a great shot, and then going into 94. So that's what I'd like to see.
Yeah, there's no question. I was going to say the exact same thing. I mean, 2005, I'm sure you could always find new little stories, new little nuggets. And I think we're living in a very interesting time right now, post, Tony La Russa era. I think years down the road, there's going to be some interesting stuff coming out of what we just kind of got through, and hopefully, a happy ending under Pedro Grifol. But yeah, that 93 team, man, that was like the black and white, that's where our podcast name came from. Good guys, talk back, good guys wear black. And that was just such an edge about them. And they carried over that into 94, and to get maybe more player perspectives of like how, like the feeling, the feeling of when did it sink in almost, and getting different ideas. We got somebody in the chat, Sydney. Thank you. The 2000 team. I mean, that was a very fun team that, just collapsed against the Mariners. Sickening. That was not the finish we wanted at all. So obviously, like, the playoff teams are easy to go after, but I mean, you guys did such a great job with this. It is really, I think, when you let us take a sneak preview last year, and it was just a horrible season. I mean, last year was so rough from so many different angles. And I was watching some of, your early footage. It was like, this is what we needed as Sox fans right now. This was the thing to, kind of build our spirits. And right now there's still a lot of frustration. There is a lot of frustration from Sox fans. I totally get it. But I think watching this documentary, Matt, honestly, you're going to be able to mend some people. You're going to be able to mend, something that's torn up right now. And it's perfect timing leading into, opening day. So kind of give us like a breakdown of part 1, part 2, part 3 of like what could be in store for here.
Yeah. I just want to comment on some of those things that you just said, though. First thing, in part 2, there's a part where Ozzie talks about the slogan, "Good guys wear black." He gives his opinion on that slogan. I'll let you guys wait for that, because I don't know if you saw it. Yeah, it's good. So there's that. And then, 93, 94 team for sure. That was, those were exciting teams. And it was such a bummer that 94 strike season happened. What a disappointment. And then the 2000 team, that's a great point. Like, I loved that team. I thought they had some great pickups. Was that Charles Johnson they got at the end of the year? They had Herbert Perry, the milkman, at third base. But that pitching staff, you just knew wasn't going to take them anywhere. It had Jim Parquet, Mike Soraka. It didn't seem like a playoff pitching staff that was going to, take you too deep into the playoffs. But those are good thoughts. And then this team, I would say it's interesting because a lot of times, so like take Ozzie for instance, right? People talk about his OPS was not that great, and look at his batting average, and you get some negativity there, but I'll take a guy in Ozzie Guillen who's a leader and plays great defense and comes through in the clutch and plays the big kicker, plays 155 to 160 games a year. And I think if this team this year, if there's one thing I would like to see, is just these guys stay on the field. Could Tim Anderson play 150 games? That would be unbelievable. So hopefully that happens. But anyway, getting to your question. Yeah, so you wanted me to go through like each part, kind of what's in store? Yeah,
break us down. So you got March 2nd, March 9th, and March 16th. So 3 straight Thursdays. You mentioned a little bit of part 3 bullpen, but you can go ahead and kind of give us what we might be in store for.
For sure. Yeah. So part one, it kind of takes you through the expectations for that 1990 team and how they just kind of came out of nowhere and had that amazing start where they took on the A's. And so there's quite a few segments on the A's rivalry, the first series at Old Comiskey Park, and then the first series in Oakland where they went out there and swept the A's. So all the players' reflections on that. And that first Oakland series, just the buzz of Comiskey, the way that park was just alive. And part one also has some great little segues that I really enjoyed working on. One is on Chicken Willie, the clubhouse guy. Kind of takes you into what it was like to be in the clubhouse, and this kind of iconic clubhouse guy who, would cook chicken and fried chicken and just all this stuff in the clubhouse in a tiny little kitchen. So there's some nice little outtakes there. And of course there's a long segment on Nancy Faust and what she brought to that team, what her playing, how innovative it was and how groundbreaking it was. She invented the walk-up song. So that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Part two gets more into kind of the grit of that team. There's also a pretty significant segment on Carlton Fisk and all the pitchers talking about what it was like to pitch to Fisk. And it's really interesting, just, what a tough leader he was. And I think every pitcher has a story of Fisk coming out and punching him in the chest and telling him, hey, throw the ball over the plate or whatever it was. The vendors, that 1983. And then there's quite a bit on the draft picks. Dan Evans really goes into detail on why they drafted those guys, what they brought to the team. And then part three, there's some great stuff on the Graybeck Guillen back-to-back home runs.
Yes.
And the ensuing series out in Texas. There's and then there's quite a bit in part three just about the park, reflections on the park, what made it so special. Brian Powers from Bandbox Ballparks gave us a lot of animations of inside the park and things like that. And then just kind of takes you through the rest of the season and how it all ended up with that fight against Oakland and how they just came up short, and then just kind of taking it home with that last game and, trying to pull out the heartstrings a little bit at the end there with, what that park meant to people, but also just what being a fan of the team means. And, try to keep it on a hopeful note and a happy note, as opposed to like, ending the thing with like the wrecking ball hitting the park and just fade to black. It's not like that. It's a happy documentary. So,
well, Matt, first of all, I want to thank you again for joining us tonight. Nick and I both appreciate it. Last question from me. Looking at, and again, doing as much of a deep dive as you've done on that 1990 team, outside of the games played, as you mentioned before, what is something or an element that you wish this current team, the 2023 White Sox, have that 1990 team had?
Yeah, that's a good question. Playing more games is a big one, but I think in things that I know aren't going to change because the games just changed. So I would love to see pitchers go deeper. Like, I love Johnny Cueto. I would love to see pitchers just not try to overpower every time they're out there and go deeper into games and, really pitch. There's a lot from Jack McDowell in the documentary, just talking about that very concept of, establishing the inside corner or establishing a secondary pitch. And obviously these are smart pitching coaches with the Sox right now. They know what they're doing. It's just I'd like to see more of that. I hope, and I read in the paper that, and it doesn't seem like at the beginning of every year they say they're going to steal more bases and be more aggressive and do better base running. So they're saying that this year. I hope it rings true. I hope we see more aggressive movement. I just want to see more excitement, less station to station. I do want them to hit more home runs this year.
Yeah.
Even though,
we all do. Absolutely.
I mean, I'd like to see them hit more home runs, but I think from that 90 team, just that tenacity that you kind of didn't see it seemed like the clubhouse was kind of falling apart a little bit at the end there. And I'd like to see that, that team come together a little bit better and see a little more tenacity and just see that fire game in and game out. That when you watch the White Sox in 1990, there was no doubt about the fact that you could tell that those players were giving it everything they had every time. And, I hope we see that this year.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a different brand of White Sox baseball this season. I really do. And of course, it's hope. It's your clean slate right now. So where can we find everything, Matt? Let us know, where we should be subscribing. What should we be waiting for, and how to watch these part 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, for sure. And before you guys send me off, I have to note that this project has been an awesome collaboration, and my brother Mike has played a big role again. I have an awesome color guy, Pete Janata. Mark Bandy does the audio, and Tom Scher, who I mentioned before, has been instrumental and with the edits and all that stuff. So I just, don't want to sit here talking about my thing. It's definitely been a huge collaboration.
So well done.
I want to mention that. And so on YouTube, it's at Last Comiskey 1990 is where you can find the page. You don't have to, but if you subscribe, you'll get reminders and things like that it's coming out. And then on Twitter, it's just at Last Comiskey. So we put a lot of content up there too.
Yeah. Matt, always a pleasure. I think, you might hop on Locked On White Sox later this week. Yeah. I know I speak for a lot of White Sox fans. Just thank you. I mean, it has been so refreshing and really warms the soul, especially during, at the beginning, during the pandemic where we didn't have White Sox baseball. And now when it's been frustrating, it's been a long off season. I think this is going to be a great setup for opening day. So thank you so much for giving us some of your time, Matt. Pat and I are going to continue to talk some White Sox, but thank you so very much. And please thank your brother. And it was a great, just a great passion project.
Thank you so much. And hey, guys, you guys have been great advocates for what we're doing from the beginning, and having us on your show back, a couple of years ago. It was really appreciated. So thanks for all you guys do, kind of getting it out there, and also for your podcasts are awesome. So appreciate it.
Thank you so, Matt. All right. We'll talk to you. All right. Bye-bye.
Cool.
Wow. That was fun.
I mean, you remember when you first watched it a couple years ago, and, it was, I don't know, man, it gave me chills. It just was something that we needed. There wasn't a lot going on in the sports world. There was a lot of uncertainty, and it just took you back. It took you back. And that team, I was 10. We were both, 10, 11 when that 1990 season happened. And I do remember going to, old Comiskey Park, and I shared some stories with Matt, and, but to hear the insight, like he had said, the players and like the scrappiness and the, they really took it personal that they were being picked last in 1990. And you got these two dynamics of the end of an era in Comiskey Park, and this showdown with the powerhouse Oakland Athletics. Folks, Pat and I have seen a sneak preview. You got to watch it. I mean, whether no matter what age, you're going to fall in love with this team all over again. So good on Matt and his brother and everybody involved. Awesome stuff.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It makes you proud to be a White Sox fan. It really does. I mean, there's some times where, we take a lot of flack in this town for not supporting our team good enough. And there's not enough of us, and all that crap that's out there, that narrative that's out there. And this helps you remember why we are who we are. It's our culture is written all over this story as White Sox fans. And it makes you remember that if there's a product out there worth watching, this fan base will go out and support it 100%. And it's not the other way around, when the owner at one point said, come out and I will take care of it, and I'll go out and buy things that we need, but you have to come out here first, which that's not the way the world works. So just made me remember why it's so fantastic to be a fan of this ball club.
Yeah, great interviews from Nancy Faust, and there was just some snippets from Peter Gammons, doing on-field interviews during that 1990 year towards the stretch when the Sox were on the heels of the Oakland Athletics. And Gammons made some kind of comment of like, the Sox are going to show the A's what it's like to play on the south side of Chicago, and just how that place was just rocking, with Nancy on the organ and Thigpen closing things down. And then you just hear, Hawk, after Thigpen would get that strikeout to end the game. Yes. It brought back so many wonderful, like, just summer memories. So March 2nd, March 9th, and March 16th, and we'll do everything we can to continue to pass that along because it's well worth your time.
Yeah, and the cool thing is, Nick, you and I obviously got a chance to get the sneak peek of episode 1, but we have not seen 2 and 3. And after hearing what we heard from Matt, I can't wait for the next 2 episodes to drop. I'm as excited as everybody else is.
And I don't, I might be in one of the parts. I might be involved.
Really?
I might be.
You are some type of social media maven, aren't you? You're just all over Skeet Allen and bebopping all over town.
I might provide my intake, my perspective. I'm just saying.
You're a good man to get perspective from. That's
you
for
never
sure.
know. Pat, White Sox baseball is back. It's only the spring, but I am all kinds of excited. I don't care. I've watched a lot of spring training baseball this past weekend. Wasn't terribly good White Sox baseball, but some fun little nuggets. Did you happen to catch any of the action? It was televised on Saturday. Sunday, you had to go. I went through MLB TV to get, and I got the Angels feed. So,
okay. I watched very little. I'm not going to lie to you. It was, it's always a busy weekend with stuff with kids for me. But listen, it is spring training after all. I looked at the lineup today. It's not a lineup that we're going to see on opening day, so it doesn't surprise me that there were 0 runs scored. And when the pitching rotation that you had going out there today, no surprise what the outcome was. I guess I'd put the panic level at like a 7 or 8. No, I'm just kidding.
That was me. That would be me. That's where I want the panic meter.
You're just blowing into a paper bag.
I had to go take a walk after it was 7-0 Angels after 3 innings. I had to leave. I just had to go get a breather. That's me though. I know.
And I'm glad you're out there to watch every inning for me to fill me in. But listen, I'll be more interested as this year goes on, or as this preseason goes on. And I'm more interested also to see when the guys go to the World Baseball Classic, because that'll be, those are not real games. They're not counting for anything, in the standings for, MLB, but it's real competition against some of the best players in the world. And that will give me, it will either make you get more excited or just, it'll make you more nervous. And what do we do? What's going to happen this year, depending on how, our guys perform in the World Baseball Classic.
These guys that are especially Moncada and Robert, they are, they cannot wait. And I feel like they have prepared themselves in the off season differently because of what they're going to be representing and what they're going to be doing in the World Baseball Classic. And I just think it's good. I think it's good for the White Sox. You get some of the juices going, the competition early. So you're going to see a lot of players, that are going to go to the World Baseball Classic, getting action right now. Like they're getting their innings. Lance Lynn started on Saturday. He's going to be pitching for Team USA. Not a shocker that he started the game on Saturday. He went 3 innings. Looked maybe a little uncomfortable in the first inning, but settled down. No walks, 4 strikeouts. Said some great things after. He felt good about what he was doing. It's just all about endurance, and that's what you hope, and obviously guys are working on all different kinds of things. That's the hope from my standpoint. Pitching, it's get ahead early, attack the strike zone, and whatever you're working on, hopefully it's working, and if you're frustrated and you continue to be frustrated, that's when I get a little concerned. But Lance Lynn had great things to say, and you had some power from Sheets and Berger, Berger was playing some first base on Saturday, played on Sunday, I believe, too. And you got 2 runs total in 2 games, 9 hits. Sox were 0 for 6 with runners in scoring position, but promising to see Sheets go long. I still don't know where Berger fits in. I don't think it's with a glove at first, but there's no question he's got power. I mean, that blast in left center field, that you have to recognize that. And I just don't know what to do.
Well, what you do is root for him to do more of it, because that's showcased everybody else. No, I'm not kidding here. Listen, if Berger and Sheets have really good springs, I don't know if they'll get moved before the start of the season, but listen, man, they're 2 guys that are out there that really don't have a home. and it'd be nice to have them showcase something to the rest of the league. I just hope that, because we talked about it, I think in the last episode, Nick, the other holes, maybe the lack of depth that we have at other positions, maybe at catcher, maybe at, somewhere in your starting rotation. Not that you're going to go out and get a great starter for trading, Gavin Sheets or Jake Berger. But listen, man, if you can package one of those guys up or both of them in some way, shape, or form, and get something back that you have you're lacking, I think that's the best case scenario. So let's root for them to have a really good spring, because let's just be honest, there isn't really any room on this team for either of them. I don't think we already have too many DH first baseman type guys.
Yeah, and Berger's an easy guy to root for. Sunday, the game against the Angels put their A team out. They had Ohtani, they had Trout, they had Rendon. We had, I think Colas played.
Couple hits.
Yeah, a couple hits, which is good. I mean, that's what you want. Some things that they definitely have to clean up defensively. I mean, good Lord, on Saturday, one of those silo shots, pop fly. And again, I just don't know if Grifol said he wanted mistakes. He wanted mistakes so we can learn from it. Let's get that out of the way, right? He had it. He had it Saturday.
It shows
and Sunday.
that the team is listening to him. It's like, hey guys,
he had it happen. Again, it happened late in the game on Saturday. So guys that are probably not going to be playing much together.
But listen, let's just stop there for a second, Nick, because regardless if these guys are going to be playing on this club at some level in the organization or somewhere else, I mean, they've played a lot of baseball in their life to get to this point, right? To be in camp with a major league team. I cannot believe that there are still people that are having trouble. I mean, it seems like it's always the White Sox with infield pop-ups.
Yeah.
It's like, holy Lord, how many in the last 2 years that we've seen that are just falling between people?
You're right. I should not be making excuses for anybody.
I know it's early, but goodness.
But it's
gracious.
not really early. Like, it's to your point, like, you're over the age of 8. So you should be able to make that play effectively. And you're watching the pitcher, who may or may not even have had a name on the back of his jersey at that point. That's when you get to, okay, we might see you in a couple of years. Maybe we'll never see you, but he's just staring at the ball as it is hanging up in the air. You're taught from a pretty young age. I remember like freshman year of high school, pitching coaches in general, just like when you've got an infield fly and it's in front of you as a pitcher, get off the mound.
just run to the stands. Go get a drink.
Just sprint to either the first base line or the third base line and look at the field. Where can I be potentially backing up? You're no good to anybody. You're coming off the mound. It's all weird. You're focusing on the third baseman coming in or the first baseman coming in or potentially the catcher, but I don't like the catcher backpedaling. I like third or first that are coming in to make the play.
It seems, I mean, I know it, you know it, the American people know it. I mean, goodness gracious.
Maybe they did that on purpose, just so Grifol can give them something to work on. It's video. Maybe it's stock video.
Yeah.
Maybe they're going to use that as an instructional tape that they're going to watch, and that was Saul's setup. I don't know.
Boy. Well, again, those are the types of things that as this spring training goes along, I want to see less and less of. I want to see a team that is, I don't need this team to be the best defensive team in the league, Nick. I don't need them to be in the top 5, but I do need them not to be dead last.
You don't want them in the bottom 5. Yeah.
No, they've got to be in the upper half of the American League.
They should, and they should.
I mean, is that so much to ask?
It's not. And I think they're going to be better defensively. It didn't look like it this past weekend. It's early. Did not like seeing Tanner Banks and Jimmy Lambert just absolutely knocked all over the place. There were 9 pitchers that threw on Sunday. The only ones to give up runs were Lambert and Banks. And again, the Angels had their studs out, but still, they were just kind of throwing. Maybe they were just working on, hey, I'm just going to groove some stuff in, and I'm still a little tight.
I want to see mistakes.
Okay. Didn't like to see that, but everybody's still saying all the right things. And again, to the 1990 doc, the chemistry stuff. And when you folks watch this documentary and you hear these players, Fletcher, McDowell, Hibbert, Gallagher, Guillen, on and on, talk about that 1990 team and just how much they cared about each other. When they put that Sox uniform on, it was they were just an absolute family. I'm hearing that is something somewhat preached by Grifol this off season, and it just happened recently. This past week, Elvis Andrus talking about how, look, every team's got talent. Every team's got talented players. It's the teams that gel. It's the chemistry. It's the camaraderie almost. It's like, how is that being formed? And he must have saw something with this White Sox team where he wanted to be back. And again, the Sox are better to have him. So that's something that I'm following is just, are you having fun?
Yeah.
Let's just have some fun. And you can use that 1990 edge if you want. They're not picking you to be dead last in the Central, but they're not picking you. Some of you are third place, in the Central. So whatever you need to do, whatever you can use it, as motivation.
Yeah. And I, you talked about the list of players that you rattled off in that documentary that spoke and talked about family. The one that stood out to me was Lance Johnson. Lance Johnson, is a guy, that it's always about Ozzie, right? Because, he was the one that talked and there's other guys on the team that you heard of or their stories are bigger, but someone that I didn't really know the personality of a Lance Johnson, and to hear what he had to say, and I'll let you folks listen to it or watch it when you do, but that's the kind of guy that I would invite back to speak to a team. Yep. Like, and most guys are going to know who a Lance Johnson is, but I'll tell you what, man, listen to him talk and listen to him talk about how his teammates cared about him and how much that meant to him. I think that's something that could speak volumes to young players and how you should comport yourself within a major league clubhouse.
Yeah. You're right on that was a great interview. There's so many. And I was just shocked by the Torborg stuff and how much love the players had for Torborg and his style and his message that he would give. And, I think it was Hibbert who had just a bad outing, young guy, just kind of coming up. And maybe it was Edwards. I don't know. But one of the arms on that team had a rough outing and thought maybe I might be sent down. And Torborg pulled him into his office after the outing. It's just like, you're here to throw strikes. Like, go at him. Don't be picking around the corners and being cute. Like, give me what you got. Yeah. Like, absolutely go at him. And to hear the love that they had. And again, Matt hit it. Ozzie Guillen's quote of like, best manager I've ever played for. And I played for La Russa and Bobby Cox. Jeff Torborg was the guy.
Yeah, which is something that you don't hear a lot, and Jeff Torborg in the conversation of, best managers, it's like forgotten managers, maybe not for, our fan base or for you and I, but
it's, it's something about a manager that just gets a sense of what he's dealing with. He's a manager of personalities. Yeah. You're managing people and egos and, all that kind of stuff. And when you just could push the right buttons, sometimes you're the right manager for the right group of people, for whatever you needed to get out of them and get them to collaborate.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, it'll be exciting to see that drop. It's exciting to see baseball and talk real baseball and games. And you had mentioned it at the start, Nick. I don't know if you want to go there. Do you want to go the direction of Tim Anderson?
Let's go for a little bit. Let's go for a little bit. Okay. Tim Anderson, focal point this past week. He made himself available to the media. There was a huge, issue with this podcast with Chuck and Sox Talk, NBC Sports Chicago's podcast, and that little blurb that got out. And what did he mean? What didn't he mean? And then shortly after that, he had an article that Merck put together on WhiteSox.com that he wants to be in a White Sox uniform for the rest of his career. He's kind of getting itchy a little bit of like, hey, I'd like to know where I'm going to be at. I know the club's got an option after 2024, I believe. But I kind of want to know long-term plans, and almost hinting at like, let's talk extension right now. Will the White Sox want to do that? Are they going to pay him? I don't know. I don't see it happening sooner rather than later. But his comments that were taken in all different kinds of directions. What did you make of what Tim Anderson said about last year, about fans, about positive, negative, all that stuff?
I tweeted, Nick, it felt very on brand for Tim Anderson. Whether that's a positive thing or a negative thing, I think that's kind of who he is. It didn't surprise me. He didn't surprise me that, he wants everybody to have good vibes and positive and all that stuff. It didn't surprise me that he kind of went after Chuck, because him and Chuck are pretty, seemingly pretty tight, and if you, in terms of, media person and athlete, I tight in that way. So
Sure.
it doesn't surprise me that he kind of went. I don't think we would have done it with maybe somebody else, that maybe with a Vinny Duber or somebody else that covers the team. I think because it is Chuck that he went after it, and he knew it would get the reaction it did. A lot of people got upset about it and bent out of shape, don't, especially when you bring the fans. Listen, man, I don't really care. Just go out there and play well and be available, as Matt was talking about. Play some freaking games this year. Keep yourself healthy and produce out there. I could care less about what guys or how they want to get motivated, how they think what everybody's individual roles should be. If you don't like the fact that, your manager they were chanting fire Tony and sell the team signs were in the outfield and things like that, then you know what? Use it as motivation. And if it's to prove the fans wrong and prove media people wrong, and that's how you're going to succeed, fine. This team, this fan base will support you till the end if you're winning and putting out a great effort. That's how this, not just the fans of this team, but fans of every team in this town. Yeah. They want people to have great effort and leave it all on the field. And that's what we ask for. Don't question the way that we're going to fan. Okay. We just, whatever gets your rocks off. Right. Yeah. So I don't really care. It felt very much Tim Anderson of him to go that way. And it doesn't really bother me. It's not a shocker. I don't know why people were shocked by it.
I don't know if I was bothered, but I thought the clip that Chuck or NBC Sports Chicago, whoever decided to use, the soundbite, right? The clicks of, Anderson kind of questioning Chuck and, being more positive and, creating confusion and all that stuff. And then I think Chuck might've said like, no, like listen to the whole thing of what he said. Well, then like, why use that clip? Like,
because it got exactly what they wanted.
That's what I just thought. It was just so ridiculous. But Anderson said that. He said what he said. And I'm sorry, you can't question people need whatever you want to fan however you want to fan. You shouldn't have a player telling you, well, I need you to be more positive. Well, give me stuff to be positive about. I think White Sox fans want to be positive. When you watch the documentary, you'll find that. Like, give us that hope, give us that intensity, give us that play. Stay on the field and walk the walk, talk the talk. And you will get our absolute allegiance. Like, we will go crazy for you. But when it's going the way it went last year, and I don't know if it was necessarily at players or at the organization in general, and actually Jerry, like, sorry, but that was the product that we had to watch and pay for and sit through. Like, absolutely do better.
At what point should we have cheered louder? Was it during the triple play versus Minnesota? Was it the 21 run outing that we had from Houston against us? We cheered
How
louder
about the September sweep when Cleveland came into town and just ate our lunch? Should we have just continued to cheer and said, that's all right. Everybody has a bad day. We expect so much more as Sox fans, after this journey since 2016 and what we sat through. And for that to happen in September, not that was singled out in the whole conversation. That was my only thing. It's like, yes, we all want to be positive. We all want to bring a positive energy as fans. And I have a lot of hope for this year and the potential. And I kind of know better as a longtime Sox fan, but I still have the hope. It's a clean slate, and what this team can do if everybody stays healthy, to Matt's point in discussing the 1990 doc. It blows my mind what could happen.
What blows my mind is how, radio hosts in this town, some of them are teammates, some are some morons down the dial that just lost their minds over it, incensed about it. It's just really, it's a lot to do about nothing, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, going after fans might not be, your best bet, but the product, what we had to deal with and where this organization has been headed, and especially this off season, we're looking for positivity. We want, I'm not speaking for all Sox fans, but I personally, I want to stay positive. I'm trying to go with that mentality. It's a long season, and for me, it's like started already, as I'm in on these spring training games, but, I think that's all we need to do on that. It's all now that the games are starting, hopefully we're done with, all the Clevenger stuff, comments and things being used as like bulletin board material, like fans against players type of stuff in this town. We need to stop. I just need to, I need to see some White Sox baseball, hopefully some winning White Sox baseball. And things will start to calm, I think.
I need some winning White Sox baseball just for you, because I need to know that you've got 162 games to break down on Locked On Sox, and you got to jump on with me every Sunday night, and I just need you in a good frame of mind.
I can't have what happened last year, Pat.
No.
I can't. I almost had to check myself into. I mean, not a maximum, not a serious hospital situation, but I was concerned a little bit. I wasn't right. And it was going to be during the All-Star break, but I think maybe we went on our golf trip during the All-Star break. I don't remember. So that didn't work out.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you didn't, check yourself in anywhere. That's a positive thing, but set yourself a little higher this time in case it goes bad. Go to a good hospital, not like a minimum security one. Make sure you're at a place that you're going to be secure and well taken care of.
I've got some numbers now on hand, and I've got some tricks now to deal with some of the issues, but it was bad last year. It was just so bad. And, so folks, and I know some of you might still be just salty with this organization, with this team, and I totally understand. I absolutely get it. Watch this documentary when it comes out on Thursday. Consume it. If you haven't, the old stuff, their previous stuff, watch that, pass it along to other Sox fans. Last Comiskey, you can find him on Twitter at Last Comiskey, and they've got their YouTube channel. And trust me, it's some great stuff coming your way on Thursday and for the next 3 weeks.
Yeah. And when do you pop in? Which episode? 2 or 3, or do you know?
I think part 2 and 3, but I don't know.
Wow. They must have lost my number.
I recreated a whole, I made a out of graham crackers. I made an old Comiskey Park during COVID. This is what I did. And I never tore it down. So I said, Matt, come on over and I'll show you my little laboratory, my little art studio where I was creating it with marshmallows and pretzel rods. And
you're like George when he did the 3D model of when they had the tape recorder in the briefcase.
Exactly.
And
that was my motivation.
Yeah. And wasn't he a Power Ranger? And then Jerry said he should have been
the peanut M&M. Yeah. The peanut M&M.
Yeah.
And it took him all day. He took a personal day to create that diorama. It's great stuff. And Matt and Mike are wonderful people. They came out to our trivia night last year. Nothing but the best for them. I'm so glad they got a write-up in the Tribune.
Yeah, good for them. And we, again, because I know Matt's going to tune in and listen to this, either he's watching now or later, but we appreciate having him on. It was fun to have him on, and I can't wait to see the other 2 episodes.
Yeah. Pat, we got a lot of baseball coming up this week. They're packing in a lot of games in a short amount of time, not a lot of days off. I'll be on my way to Arizona to get a sneak peek at this firsthand. Wednesday morning, and I'll see a couple games out there, and it's looking beautiful. I don't know if you paid attention to the weather.
I haven't, because I'm not going, but I'm glad for you that the weather looks like it's going to be beautiful. So
yeah.
you're going to be out there. You're going to be yelling at pitchers to run off the field when there's any kind of infield pop up.
I mean, just get out of there. Once you see it's right up a silo, just sprint. Keep your head up, because you're going to you're going to T-bone a first baseman or a third baseman.
We've seen that before.
Oh, sure. Get off the field. Keep your eyes on the field. Like, should I be backing up at first? Should I back up home plate? Where could potentially a missed, throw come in? Let the infielders deal with all that stuff. Don't stand around and watch. Don't stand around and watch.
You do that. Lend your your expertise to the team, and I know that they're going to be in good hands when you're out there.
Well, you get to go in to watch, if you've gone out there, folks, you know what I'm talking about. The practice fields are open. You can check things out early, and it's just fun to catch whatever you can catch, and it's an exciting time,
Well, I'm happy for you.
Yeah, I know you are.
I'm really excited for you.
Yeah.
And I hope you have a great trip.
Pat, I know you mean that, and it is always a pleasure talking White Sox baseball with you.
Buddy, let's do it again sometime. I don't know when you're coming back, so who knows when we're going to do this again.
Yeah, I might not.
Lord knows.
I just might not. Folks, really appreciate you spending some time with us. You can find this podcast absolutely everywhere you find your podcasts, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're trying to do these live shows now, whether it's Sunday night or Monday night. Sunday night has been pretty reliable for us, but obviously you can find the audio, as you always will. Just subscribe to the podcast. Every new episode comes into that inbox. We're on Twitter at Good Guys TV. We've got a Facebook fan page for Matt Flesh, who, I can't say enough about, the man hours alone. I can't even imagine that went into this project. It's going to be worth your time. So check that out. Last Comiskey, March 2nd, 9th, and 16th. For Pat Hester, I am Nick Murawski. Until next time, go Sox.